German police will create a special unit to shoot down drones. This is the television news service online. I am Yamrichka Padoko. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch the broadcast, and be sure to comment on what you found most interesting. Next, a few topics from today's episode. Russian drones are constantly harassing the Sumy region around the clock.
At the moment, there have been fewer of them, so the intensity has dropped a bit.
How the 71st Brigade destroys camouflaged enemies and saves this section of the front. Russia's hybrid war against Europe is already in full swing. Across our entire region, underwater cables have been cut, airports and logistics hubs have been paralyzed by cyber attacks. How Ukrainian experience will be useful for protecting Europe and whether it will help Ukraine itself. Sumy is under drone attack, with at least 3 hits recorded. The Belopilya area is also under fire. Russian drones targeted a vehicle carrying energy workers who were just about to respond to a call. No people were injured. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, this is already the 31st vehicle in Sumy region. An energy vehicle has been damaged by the occupiers. Over the past day, enemy attacks in the Sumy region have left 2 people dead and 5 injured. In the village of Kherson, a Russian drone killed a man and 2 others were hospitalized. And in the Mykolaiv community, an agricultural company worker was killed as a result of an occupier's strike. A 4-year-old girl from the village of Dnipropetrovsk is in critical condition here. The occupiers struck her house at night, causing a fire. The child is in intensive care with burns and injuries, and her mother and grandmother have also been hospitalized. In the Stepanivska community, about 20 houses and the post office were damaged by drones. In Sumy, according to the city council, a non-residential building caught fire due to strikes, private property in the village was damaged, and the roof of a residential building in a residential area was also affected. Preliminary reports indicate no casualties.
There were 3 hits by enemy drones. One of them struck the roof of an apartment building, damaging the roof and several windows. According to preliminary information, there are no wounded or fatalities, and all relevant services are working at the scene.
And now to the situation at the front. Russian troops are advancing in the Sumy and Zaporizhzhia regions. Analysts from the monitoring project Deep State report on the occupiers' offensive near Novo-Mikolaivka in the Sumy region, as well as near Novo-Ivanivka, Okotnice, Malinivka, Vishneve and Poltavka in Zaporizhzhia. Meanwhile, the 141st Separate Mechanized Brigade is clearing Sosnivka, Koroshe, Novoselivka and Sikneve of occupiers in the Dnipropetrovsk region. This success was achieved in cooperation with the 225th Separate Assault Regiment. During the assault, our defenders eliminated 50 Russian occupiers and captured about 8. Analysts from Deep State report that the Russians are trying to retake the lost positions, but the defense forces are doing everything to prevent this. At the same time, the occupiers captured Malivka in the Dnipropetrovsk region, and the Pokrovska section of the front remains the most difficult. That is where the Russians are launching the most assaults at the moment. Across the entire front line, nearly 100 clashes have been recorded. These are the latest data from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In the northern border area, the crews of strike FPV drones from the 71st Jaeger Brigade carry out dozens of launches a day, searching for Russians among the dense forests as small groups try to approach the forward positions of our defenders. The task of our pilots is to prevent the situation from escalating into close combat. The film crew of Alexander Motorny has returned from the drone operators' positions of the Jaegers in the Sumy region. Your quote will appear on your screens during the report. This is a fundraiser specifically for the strike drone company of the 71st Jaeger Brigade. It is very much needed by our soldiers.
Just a few seconds for decontamination, then in the darkness, another minute to unload supplies, water, drones with ammunition, and to rotate the crews. Every second spent on the surface is precious and unnecessary because enemy drones in the border area of Sumy region are now constantly watching over Ukrainian positions without interruption.
Around the clock. And our air defense worked quite effectively. And quite often.
At the same time, the Russian guided aerial bombs fly indiscriminately, exploding right on the very front line.
We have often had cases when a position was destroyed by a guided bomb, and it wasn't just one bomb. 4 guided bombs could hit a squad's position in a single day where only 3 or 4 soldiers are stationed.
The Russian infantry is being smoked out by the pilots and drone operators of Ukraine's 71st Brigade. Lately, the assault enthusiasm of the enemy has noticeably faded.
At the moment, we've driven them out, so their intensity has dropped a bit. Not just their intensity, I think their morale has dropped too. When we first arrived, they were running around here quite boldly, and it really seemed like they thought they could just walk around freely. But we drove out the main ones as we saw, and most likely they brought in a rotation on
stretchers.
Fresh ones who also ran around quite a bit, and now they simply don't feel like running anymore at all.
But the pilots of the Jaeger Brigade say that the Kremlin's infantry is still no less persistent.
There's no sense that Russia is finished yet. I think we still need to keep hitting them for that feeling to appear. But we are destroying them relentlessly.
About 2 regiments of Russian assault troops, ever since the 71st entered the Sumy direction, thanks to the efforts of our soldiers, have ceased to be any kind of threat forever. But that hasn't made the work any less for Ukrainian pilots.
Sit down.
Time to get to work. Sit down. Assault groups, some groups on their positions, enemy shelters on their positions, all of that.
It is their job, or rather potential targets, says Solovey. He started the war in 2022 as an operator of an American anti-tank missile system, but for the past 1 year and a half, he has changed his specialty.
I meticulously assemble the drones, carefully arm them, and then prepare them for an immediate takeoff.
Every clear day they make from about 15 to nearly 25 launches.
The task was to detect the enemy with reconnaissance by Laroga. 2 enemies in the grove. We will try to destroy the larger ones.
It is precisely such small groups of Russians that are trying to advance forward.
They gather together, and then in small coordinated groups, they try to reach our defensive positions. Every day there's movement. Every day they go to new positions. They keep coming.
To conceal themselves in Sumy region, the occupiers use dense tree foliage and thick bushes with deep local ravines. Ukrainian pilots admit that finding enemy infantrymen in such conditions is very difficult. Basically, it's trees with green foliage and also green bushes. And it's hard to see, right? That's where the mushrooms grow, where I want them to.
Yuma, got it. There's video, so there are coordinates.
Why for
this mushroom?
Sit down.
Solovey, a former Javelin operator and now a navigator and crew member of strike drones in the 71st Jaeger Brigade, says that the enemy is not using heavy armored vehicles here. And in the Sumy region, the enemy is not using them at all right now. Russian artillery mostly operates from across the border, and silencing it is the job of Ukrainian gunners. But Solovey insists that drones are now the #1 weapon on the front lines, especially in the dense forests of Ukraine's northern border region.
They are much more effective and possess a significantly wider range of practical applications. Whether it's against equipment, enemy personnel, or fortifications, plus they can fly much farther and destroy much more. From
In the border area in Sumy region, Alexander Motony, Oleksiy Osavchuk and Serhiy Shportailo. TSN 1+1.
2 people who were traveling by car were attacked by Russians this morning in Kherson. 1 local woman was injured, and at dawn, 2 women were hurt because of the occupiers. 2 dead and 10 wounded in Donetsk region. In Vodiansky, the Russians killed 2 residents and wounded another. 5 people were injured in Druzhkivka and 1 each in Lvivka and Kramatorsk. 5 wounded in Dnipropetrovsk region, 2 civilians near Kryvyi Rih, and 3 more in Nikopol district, including an 80-year-old woman. In Novousinove Kharkiv region, a man was wounded, and in Borova, the enemy hit an ambulance. No people were injured. 3 people were wounded in Chernihiv region after an arrival. In Pryluki, locals are being asked not to open their windows due to heavy smoke. And in Nizhyn district, the air raid alert has lasted for more than 15 hours already, where drones struck railway infrastructure. There were no casualties at the energy facility and the polyclinic, but the situation with power supply in the region may worsen. More details about the enemy attack on Nizhyn. TSN was told about it by the city mayor, Alexander Kodola.
Starting from midnight, the shelling of Ukrzaliznytsia facilities began. 12 Shaheds attacked a freight train on the section between Nosivka and Nizhyn, as a result of which the tracks were significantly damaged. Currently, train traffic to the city of Nizhyn has been suspended since this morning. All trains from Kyiv stop only at Nosivka. The enemy also continues to strike at the energy sector. In the morning, there were attacks on an energy facility in our community. As a result, part of the city was left without electricity. At the moment, the security situation is quite difficult and the air raid alerts do not stop.
Forced energy saving is returning. Today, Ukrainians once again saw recommendations and requests from energy workers to use kilowatts rationally. The Ministry of Energy says the enemy attacked energy facilities in Chernihiv and Dnipropetrovsk regions, and it is in the Chernihiv region that the situation remains the most difficult. Energy workers are working almost around the clock to restore electricity for everyone. At the same time, they are preparing for the heating season, modernizing equipment and gathering the necessary parts. At the same time, the shutdown of certain thermal power plants and substations puts pressure on the entire energy system. Therefore, Ukrainians are being asked to save electricity during peak hours. That is from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. Several thousand families were left without power due to the overnight attack on Odesa region. However, by morning, thanks to the efforts of energy workers, their homes were reconnected to the grid. But 7,000 customers in the region are still without electricity due to bad weather. In Odesa region, there have been heavy rains again. In just one day, 4 months' worth of rain fell, and due to flooding, more than 400,000 customers were left without electricity. But the electricians worked around the clock and have already restored power to most homes. Today, meteorologists are forecasting increased rainfall in the south of Odesa region, with an orange level of danger declared. Wind gusts of up to 20 meters per second are expected. 15-year-old Anastasia and her mother Ulyana, victims of a Russian attack in the Lviv region, were mourned in the village of Mshana, where the girl's grandmother lives. They died on Sunday when more than 100 drones and missiles attacked the Lviv region. One of the strikes claimed the lives of an entire family. The elderly couple, their daughter-in-law Ulyana and her 15-year-old daughter Nastya all died. Only the girl's father survived. He is in the hospital in serious condition. Hundreds of people came to say their goodbyes to the deceased. The stream of mourners did not stop. Classmates and friends of Nastya, family friends, fellow villagers, and her father's comrades in arms, who returned from the front as soon as he learned about the tragedy, all came. People brought armfuls of flowers to the coffins, and blue and yellow flags led the solemn procession.
The grandmother lost her only daughter, her only child, and her father was away that day. He was at the funeral. It was very hard for him, but he is holding on. All that remains is the desire to live. Nothing else is left.
The Russians are trying to advance through Dnipropetrovsk region. People are being forced to leave their homes and take their belongings with them. Shops are closing and their owners are selling off their goods before the occupiers burn them. About the difficult life on the border of two regions, Natalia Nahorna will tell you more.
This is a village where the front line is relentlessly approaching. It is located on the border of Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions. It is important for the occupiers to develop their offensive in two directions. And it is important for us because this is our Ukrainian village. But the Russians are using terror to drive people out of here. Now we're driving through the village and we can literally see before our eyes a settlement that once had more than 10,000 residents. It's so deserted now that it's almost impossible to meet a single person. Destroyed buildings, fallen trees. This is what the central square looks like now. This square used to be popular with people, but now it's pretty much just us here. It's a bit cloudy, so we're hoping there won't be any FPV drones, which have already started reaching this area. From this village to the front line, it's 17 kilometers. Right now, everywhere here, there are burned out cars, damaged houses, and craters like this. There are broken power lines nearby as well. Maybe this doesn't surprise anyone anywhere in Ukraine anymore, but in these modest houses in an ordinary village near the front, 3 Shaheds hit at once.
I'll show you precisely what kind of gifts they unfortunately left behind. They flew in from approximately 500 meters away from this very spot.
Are you planning to leave?
Of course, it's already necessary.
Kryhori is filming to show the neighbors what their house has turned into.
There's still many people staying.
No, a lot of people are already leaving. Already probably about 80% have left, because right now we're working as movers, and I'd say about 80% have definitely left.
Military medics are providing assistance to wounded civilians.
In the past month and a half, there have been 4 civilian casualties. There was 1 woman left. Recently, after the shelling, shaheds hit her house. She was in serious condition with burns. The woman was taken to the hospital. Civilians too after the strikes. Lately, this settlement has been heavily shelled. And after the strikes, they were in varying degrees of severity. The most serious case was that woman.
It's getting harder and harder to buy anything here.
And how does it work? Did it used to work? A lot of people have left. The stores have closed down. There's nothing left anymore.
The people who are still here are worried. What if the post office and the supermarket close too? The shelves in the supermarket currently look like this. It's becoming harder to deliver goods. With each passing day, it gets more difficult. This is a frontline zone. How much longer can we go on like this? It's especially painful to see the shelves with fresh bread empty. The store administration is trying to reassure people. They just need to bring in more goods. The store is open, everything is fine. We're just waiting for a delivery. So everything is operating as usual. Local residents can barely hold back tears because they know that with winter, the cold and the front line approaching, things will get even harder. We're not staying, we're slowly moving out. Because it's really bad here every night.
Sorry, it's intense. There's nowhere to run. Really nowhere at all. They just keep shelling and shelling. I don't even know where else they can shell.
Natalia Nahorna, Ihor Siri, Vitaly Vesyanikov, Tesan 1+1.
The price of natural gas for the population will not increase this winter. Volodymyr Zelensky announced this after a conversation and a statement from the government by Yulia Sviridenko. Thus, at least until May 2026, Ukrainians who use gas at home will continue to pay 7 hryvnias 96 kopecks per cubic meter. This price has been in effect since May 2022, when the government introduced a moratorium on raising tariffs. Minister Sviridenko also reported that a decision has already been made to prohibit disconnecting consumers in frontline communities from energy supply due to debts. Additionally, the government has allocated another 1.5 billion hryvnias specifically to frontline regions to protect energy facilities from Russian attacks. Russian air defense is hitting its own in the Belgorod region. A missile from the Russian air defense system fell on a residential building, and footage of the strike has appeared online. The video shows how the missile hits the upper floors of the building at an angle, with windows blown out in 15 apartments and about 20 parked cars damaged. Officially, there are no casualties. Local authorities report that the incident allegedly occurred due to the fall of drone debris. Last night, drone flights continued in the region and a missile attack was also announced. Currently, at least 2 Russian airports are not operating due to the presence of drones. And in Novosibirsk, a factory that produces electronics and microchips for the military-industrial complex of the Russian occupiers caught fire. The city was covered by thick black smoke, and the blaze was clearly visible from afar. More than 70 people, 24 pieces of equipment, and a rescue train were involved in extinguishing the fire at the strategic plant. However, 2,000 square meters of the electronics factory were burned out. Help from the dictator's friend. In September, Belarus increased its gasoline exports to Russia 4-fold. Last month, 49,000 tons of gasoline and 33,000 tons of diesel fuel were delivered by rail. This is happening against the backdrop of a fuel shortage that arose in Russia after Ukrainian attacks on oil refineries. Although this volume is small for the occupiers' needs, experts say it clearly shows that problems in Russia are gradually increasing. In recent weeks, some Russian regions have temporarily frozen fuel prices and are rationing gasoline sales. The aggressor country has also restricted the export of gasoline and diesel. Analysts call the tactic of Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil refineries successful, as the fuel crisis in Russia has reached record levels. There, those oil refineries have lost 38% of their capacity. Russia is waging a hybrid war against Europe, and the regular appearance of drones in European skies is part of this strategy. This was stated today from the podium of the European Parliament by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. According to the official, the Kremlin's goal is to divide the European Union and thus weaken support for Ukraine. Her subordinates agree. The European Commissioner for Defense believes that these hybrid provocations could continue for years. What the European Union is preparing in response will be reported by Radio Liberty's correspondent in Brussels, Zoriana Stepanenko.
According to the European Commission, hybrid provocations are already spreading beyond the eastern flank of Europe. Drones have been spotted not only in Poland and Romania, but also in Belgium, Denmark and Germany. The legislation now allows the police to shoot them down. One of Europe's largest defense giants, which manufactures air defense systems for Belgium, stated that drones are flying over its secret facilities with increasing frequency. And just recently, they were also spotted over the presidential palace in Finland, allegedly launched by a tourist from Hong Kong. The number of such incidents is rapidly increasing. A spokesperson for the European Commission believes this is a targeted campaign by Russia, aimed at destabilizing the EU. Across
the entire Union, undersea cables have been cut, airports and logistics hubs paralyzed by cyber attacks, and elections have become targets of malicious influence campaigns. This is a consistent and escalating campaign aimed precisely at unsettling our citizens. Europe must urgently equip itself with strategic response capabilities.
Most members of the European Parliament agreed with von der Leyen that Europe is in a state of hybrid war. There was also a comparison made to a grey zone, somewhere between war and peace. According to the European Commissioner for Defense, this could drag on for years. Politicians agree that Russia is testing the patience and capabilities of the European Union, and they consider the smartest response to be strengthening these capabilities without allowing themselves to be divided. The voices claiming that Europe does not need missiles and ammunition and that its residents are primarily concerned about inflation and their own purchasing power were in the minority in Parliament, and as usual, these were the extreme political forces, both left and right. In the context of responding to current threats, the so-called drone wall was mentioned in particular. This is one of the flagship proposals of the European Commission, which promises to deliver a roadmap for strengthening the EU's overall defense capability by 2030 by the end of October.
It's a pity that it took recent provocations for us to come to our senses. It seems we are poorly prepared for this future. At the moment, our defense is truly not ready to detect drones and track them as they cross our borders. From container ships, drones can destroy targets all along the entire European coastline. The question is what needs to be done.
The relevant European Commissioner believes that a drone wall can be built over the course of the next year. In the near future, he says, drones will be detectable by acoustic sensors, satellites and radars, while in the more distant future, interceptors, electronic warfare systems and mobile units will be needed. A key role is assigned to Ukraine due to its acquired experience. Zelensky has declared his readiness to share his experience. He is also sharing Ukrainian intelligence data with partners. The data shows. To launch drones, Russia is using a tanker from the so-called Shadow Fleet. There are more than 100 of them. It is planned to add them to the blacklist as part of the 19th sanctions package. Work on it is ongoing. From Brussels, Zoriana Stepanenko, Radio Svoboda, especially for TSN 1+1.
What do you think about the Russian war against Europeans? Be sure to write your thoughts about it in the comments to this broadcast on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Meanwhile, I will continue with the TSN broadcast. Germany is granting police the authority to shoot down drones that violate the country's airspace. Today, the government has already approved the corresponding bill. Next, it must be approved by Parliament. After the law is passed, law enforcement will be able to neutralize any unidentified drones that pose a threat near airports, railway infrastructure, ships, government institutions, and the border. The German Minister of Internal Affairs has promised to create a separate unit within the police for this purpose. Specialists will be trained and equipped with all the necessary tools for the task, in particular with jammers and even lasers. Germany also plans to hold consultations with Ukraine and Israel, who have more experience in countering drones. The new law was decided upon after unknown drones paralyzed the operations of the Mülheim airport last Friday, resulting in dozens of flights being cancelled. Chancellor Friedrich Merz suggests that Russia is behind these provocations. Overall, throughout the past month, there have been regular violations of the airspace of European countries by unidentified drones. Dozens of drones entered Polish airspace and 2 Russian fighter jets entered Estonian airspace. Unidentified objects were also detected in Scandinavian countries and Belgium. Ukrainian intelligence is certain that Russia is using ships from the Shadow Fleet to launch them. Russian money for the benefit of Ukraine, the European Union, together with the United States, is putting pressure on Belgium to allow the use of the aggressor country's funds. The Financial Times reports that Western allies are insisting on using 140 billion euros for a reparations loan to Ukraine. They hope to agree on the decision by December of this year and to send the first tranches in the second quarter of 2026. However, according to journalists, Belgian Prime Minister Bart De Wever is very concerned about such steps, as he asked the other 26 European Union countries to guarantee the legal and financial risks that may arise from the use of Russian assets, so that Brussels would not have to return them on its own. Let me remind you, after the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, about 300 billion euros of the Russian central bank's assets were frozen in the West. Of that amount, approximately 190 billion are held by the Belgian international company Euroclear, which handles transactions and the custody of securities. Previously, the European Union was afraid to touch these funds, but over the past few weeks, this opposition has shifted, not least due to Donald Trump's calls to use Russian assets to finance Ukraine's defense.